Pushpin disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction created purely for emotional and narrative impact. Names, characters, and incidents are the product of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, or actual events. I couldn't. You okay? I asked softly, stepping closer. He looked up, startled at first, then gave a faint nod. Yeah, just the usual. I hesitated before sitting beside him. I can help with that, you know. I'm studying physiotherapy. Would you mind if I tried? He raised an eyebrow. A massage. I smiled, trying not to sound awkward. Then, just as I was about to stop, he whispered something I wasn't ready for. You remind me of... I just stood there like an idiot until I heard footsteps approaching from inside. Panicking, I hurried back to my apartment, heart racing. I worked silently, trying not to push him. She was a nurse, he said suddenly. I blinked. Who? The woman you remind me of. Her name was Eliza. We met during my last deployment. She didn't make it back. I didn't know what to say, so I just listened. She had this way of touching people, not just physically, but emotionally. She made everything feel less sharp. He chuckled sadly. I used to tell her she could heal the world with her hands. My hands stilled for a moment, then continued. She died in a roadside bombing. She was trying to save someone else. That's who she was. I swallowed the lump forming in my throat. He didn't cry. His voice was steady, but the weight behind it was crushing. I haven't let anyone touch me since then. Not even a handshake. I thought if I let someone close, it would be betraying her. I sat beside him now, hand on his shoulder, unsure whether to say anything. You're not betraying her, I said quietly. You're surviving her. He turned to look at me, eyes shimmering but unfallen. You have her kindness. That's what scared me. I smiled gently. Kindness doesn't have to be scary. For the first time, he didn't flinch when I said something comforting. In fact, he looked at peace, even if just for a moment. That day, I realized Daniel wasn't cold or distant. The flickering candlelight from his hallway cast long shadows across his face, softening the usually rigid lines. I brought you something warm, I said, holding up the soup with a small smile. He moved aside to let me in. You always show up when I least expect it. And yet you still open. As I leaned in, my hand brushed the side of his neck, and he shivered, not from cold, but from something deeper. He reached up and gently placed his hand over mine, stopping my movement. I froze. He didn't speak right away, but when he did, his voice was barely above a whisper. You don't have to fix me, Maya. I know that's what you're trying to do. I'm not, I began, but he turned to face me. You don't have to pretend. You care. I see it in the way you look at me when you think I'm not paying attention. You want to help to heal. But sometimes, broken things can't be fixed. I felt tears burning behind my eyes. I don't want to fix you, I said quietly. I just want you to know you don't have to carry it alone. He stared at me for a long time, like trying to decide whether to believe me. And then, without warning, he reached out and took my hand in his. Just stay, he whispered. Even if you say nothing. Just be here. I didn't answer with words. I sat beside him, hand in his, and leaned my head gently on his shoulder. Outside, the storm raged. But inside that tiny, candlelit apartment, the silence between us said everything. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just kindness. You've been off lately, said Jenna, my best friend, as we shared coffee on our break at the rehab center. I've been helping my neighbor, I admitted. A former soldier. He's complicated. Jenna raised an eyebrow. Complicated how? I sighed. He's wounded, inside and out. I just wanted to help. But now, I don't know. It's more than that. Maya, you're kind. But don't get too attached to someone who's still broken. People like that can drown you in their pain. I didn't argue, but the words stayed with me. Did I do something wrong? I finally asked. No, he replied quietly. You did something right. That's the problem. I turned to look at him. I don't understand. He rubbed his hands over his face, then looked up. I've spent years keeping everyone out. You walk in and suddenly I'm feeling again. I don't know what to do with that. You push me away, I said. That's what you do. I'm falling for you, Maya, he said suddenly, the words tumbling out like a confession he'd fought for days. And it scares the hell out of me. I stared at him, stunned. You shouldn't fall for me, he continued. I'm not whole. I'm haunted. What if I hurt you? What if I pull you down with me? I walked over slowly, my heart hammering in my chest. Then let me fall with you. Not to fix you. Just to stand beside you while you heal. His eyes shone with unshed tears. He reached for my hand, but stopped halfway, unsure. I took the last step forward and placed my hand in his. Maybe it was foolish. Maybe Jenna was right. But at that moment, it didn't matter. Because falling in love wasn't a decision, it was already happening. After that night, things changed, and not in the way I had hoped. Daniel pulled back. He stopped answering my texts, kept his door shut, and avoided the hallway during the times I usually passed by. The man who once let me in emotionally and physically was retreating again into the shadows of his grief. I told myself to be patient. I told myself this was part of his healing. But it hurt. God, it hurt. Weeks passed like slow, aching chapters. I busied myself with coursework, volunteering longer hours at the rehab center, and pretending everything was fine. But at night, I would sit by my bedroom window, staring at the faint light that glowed under Daniel's door, wondering if he was okay, wondering if he missed me too. One afternoon, while sorting mail downstairs, I found a letter addressed to me, with Daniel's handwriting. My fingers trembled as I tore it open. Maya, I owe you more than silence, but that's all I've been able to give. When I told you I was falling, I'm not here to ask for anything. He stepped aside, and I walked in for what I knew might be the last time. I wanted to give you one last massage, I said softly. For old time's sake. He nodded silently and sat down, pulling his shirt off without hesitation this time. I worked on his back gently, every touch filled with unspoken emotion. My internship was intense, long hours, difficult patients, and emotional cases that left me drained every night. But nothing tired me more than the ache I carried for him. I kept my phone nearby, hoping for a message. Nothing came. But then, one evening, after a but because she believed in second chances, and I think you were mine. Daniel, I sat down on the floor, tears slipping silently down my cheeks. My fingers trembled as I opened the notebook. The pages were filled with messy handwriting, doodles in the margins, and quotes that made my heart swell. Even broken wings can carry you forward. Love doesn't fix everything. That he was facing his trauma, he said it made him feel more grounded, like time slowed down just long enough to let his heart speak honestly. I told him how I missed his quiet strength, the way he listened without interrupting, and the safe silence that followed his company. I told him about the notebook, how Eliza's words had begun to influence my own healing. One day, I got a letter that made my hands tremble. I walked to the park today. I sat on a bench where she and I used to go. And I didn't cry. I thought of her and I smiled. That's when I knew I'm ready. I don't want to love in memories anymore, Maya. I want to love in real time. Come back when you're ready. I'll be waiting, if you still feel the same. I read it over and over until the words blurred with tears. I did still feel the same. I had fallen for him quietly, and now I was ready to choose him loudly, with my whole heart. But there was still time left in my internship. I wanted to finish what I had started. To become the person who could walk back into his life not just as comfort, but as a woman who knew her strength. Who didn't just offer healing, but had found it herself. I wrote back, wait for me. I'm coming back not as someone who pities your pain, but someone who sees your courage. Someone who isn't afraid to stay. No reply came after that. Just silence. But for the first time, it didn't feel empty. It felt like anticipation. 1 year later, I stood in front of the same old apartment door, Daniel's door, my heart pounding like it had on the very first day I knocked. The building hadn't changed. The hallway still smelled faintly of old paint and something warm drifting from a neighbor's kitchen. But I had changed. I was stronger, sure, softer in a way that didn't feel like weakness anymore. I had helped people heal. And now, I was ready to return to the one person I'd never stopped thinking about. I lifted my hand and knocked twice. The door opened almost immediately. Daniel stood there, barefoot in sweats and a loose black t-shirt, eyes wide, stunned. His hair was slightly longer, his jaw more defined. He looked older, but lighter somehow, like time had finally loosened its grip on him. He didn't speak right away. Neither did I. Then he smiled, the kind that came slow, uncertain, but deeply real. "You came back." "I said I would," I whispered, breath caught in my throat. He stepped aside, and I walked in. Everything inside his apartment had changed. The old couch had a new throw blanket. A small bookshelf stood by the window, filled with paperbacks and framed photographs, including one of a smiling young woman in army fatigues. Eliza. I could tell by the softness in Daniel's eyes when he caught me looking at it. "I started adding things," he said, following my gaze. "Making space for life again." I nodded, barely holding back tears. "I kept all your letters," he added. "I read them on the days when my progress felt invisible. You reminded me that healing wasn't about being fixed, it was about not giving up." We sat down together, the silence between us tender now, not heavy. "I'm not the same man you left," he said after a moment. "I know," I replied. "And I'm not the same woman who left you." He reached over slowly and took my hand in his. No hesitation. No trembling. "I don't want to waste another year," he said softly. "Not if you're still willing to stay." I leaned in, pressing my forehead to his. "I didn't come back for a visit, Daniel. I came home." He pulled me into his arms, not like someone scared of breaking, but like someone ready to begin again. And, just like that, something closed, and something else opened. That evening, I gave him a massage not to ease the pain, but to celebrate the journey. His muscles relaxed under my fingers, not from exhaustion, but from peace. He looked up at me, eyes gentle, full of emotion. "You're not just healing me anymore," he whispered. "You're part of my healing." I smiled. "And you're part of mine." The storm we had both weathered separately was behind us now. What lay ahead was uncertain, but it was ours, built not on pity or rescue, but on mutual strength and quiet love. And that left me truly speechless. 62.